Hi, Mandy. Welcome. I'm so happy that we're here today to have another beautiful conversation.
Hey Patty, it's so good to see you.
Yes, it's always nice to see you. And I love that we've had that beautiful training that we went through at Next together and that our journeys have come together over this time and place where we're able to bring our tools and our gifts to support other people. And I really want to hear today what work you do, because I know you've inspired me on more than one occasion. And I just want to hear from you the tools that you use and the work that you do to help others find their light.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you. We've said this to each other before. I always felt like we were kindred spirits. Um, and we connected so quickly. And I think it is because we both always, look to find ways to help other people and to lift other people up. And so I'm glad to be here today. So thanks for having me. And yeah, so for those that don't know me, I am a psychologist and a therapist and a human performance person. I do a little bit of all of that. I work at an organization that is a community health practice, which means we see all people, regardless of their ability to pay. We take all forms of insurance and Medicare and Medicaid and all that stuff, and even if they don't have it, we will still take them through, and we get that through federal grants and other gracious donors, things like that. So I am on the behavioral health side, and I love that work because I do feel like it's a chance to give back. Um, and I get to see, and I feel like I'm giving back on the day to day. And then the other side of that is that every once in a while, and in my own private setting, I have a company called Magic Feather, and we work with organizations, communities, and people try and create psychologically safe spaces, um, and also help people use that psychologically safe space to create peak performance. So I work with a lot of coaches and parents on, kind of what to say and how to say it and things like that, because I certainly see in my area, I live in suburbia. I'm over on the East Coast, so I'm the high strung version of Patty, if that's even possible to be more. um, and yeah, I see a lot of parents that just don't know how to be a parent on the sideline. And they all think their kid's going to get a D1 scholarship. And as Patty and I both know, that's not always a thing. It can be, but it's really not what you should aim for. You should aim for a more holistic view on your child. So I deal with that too. So that was a really quick overview. Um,
Hear about more about magic feathers?
oh yeah, sure. So yeah, I was talking about that a little bit. We kind of dive into all different areas, but the psychologically safe space, Google kind of made that a popular term because that's what they used to create innovation, right? So we all know, or most people are really aware and have experienced when we get in that creative space and we're trying to be creative or think of something different, and then someone just kind of shoots us down, or they ignore us, or they don't listen. And suddenly we feel disconnected. We don't feel like we have any value. We lose confidence. And we've all done it to people before probably, and we've all had it done to ourselves, right? And unfortunately. And so, what Google really learned is if we can celebrate failure, right? And failure doesn't have to, it has such a bad connotation, I even hate saying the word. But if we can celebrate it and realize that that is one more step towards achieving a goal, then people feel safer to take those risks and to try new things and to say things that might seem like a little, outside of the bell curve. And this is all put together with people like Carol Dweck and Angela Duckworth and all of these big names that work in that space of resilience and grit and growth mindset. And so it's kind of part of that. So we take all those theories and practices and help different groups. And like I said, I've worked with individuals. I've had some athletes, executives, and even just, everyday people that are like, hey, I don't know how to balance all this. And we use that and kind of help them, or I don't know how to get my team do something better or come up with new ideas. And we spend a lot of times a little bit of IO psychology or with that type of group, because I'll talk a lot about, okay, well, what is your goal? Like what is your end game? And it's amazing how many times people don't know what that is, right? They're like, well, we have to increase revenue. I'm like, okay, well, as a consumer, I don't really care if I increase your revenue. Like, what's the give back, right? Like, what do you do? And then we kind of like pull that thread and come all the way back to, why would your team feel like they can really bloom in this environment? Where do they feel safe and where might they not, right? Where are the barriers coming up? And certainly there are some, I'll leave the tech companies unnamed, but there are certainly some tech companies that have done a really poor job, and they're known for being really toxic, really intense environments. So people don't stay there long, right? There's like the couple that are lucky and they stay there for maybe 10 years, but the majority leave within a year. Um, because they just don't like that kind of cutthroat environment. And really, the research shows that no one thrives in a cutthroat environment, truly. That if you feel put down, if you feel cut out, if you feel abandoned or, invalidated, you're not going to be your best self, and you're not going to try harder. You're not going to be motivated, and you're not going to be creative. All that creative stuff in our brain shuts down
It
because when
all
you feel
shuts down.
threatened, all you're trying to do is hide or run away.
Yeah,
Right?
that you're bringing up so many beautiful points because we all contribute to that. And I've had some conversations recently. I had one with even Laura Putnam that I do think we've swung a little bit to the point where we're holding a leader responsible for the psychological safety of a group, when I believe we're all seeing that one individual who could be the newest person on the team could be that person that derails the whole team with the negativity, with the comments, with the inability to support others, with insecurity. And I often find that somebody is highly insecure, and it could come before or after they get hired, will create damage for other people in that work environment. And so I'd be curious to you when you go in, because I've worked with teams also at Stanford who are working very hard to work on psychological safety because of the research, because of the importance of it. And how do we have conversations with those individuals that may or may not be leaders who are creating the dysfunction and not allowing the psychological safety? Have you come across that? And how do you move in without creating more damage?
So great question. And I think it's a multifaceted approach. Truly, I don't think there's one single answer, like everything, right? Whether it's health or wellness or happiness, there's no silver bullet. There's several things that you have to do. And I've seen this done in a couple different places. I also used to work for the federal government in another life. I've lived like 10 lives. And they did actually a pretty good job. One of the things they did, and they put ownership in multiple places. They did put some ownership on the leaders, because the leaders do set the culture, right? They're the ones that set the vision, the mission. They set the culture. They are the ones that approve the policies that will start to create the environment. They're also, and so there's that, right? So there is some level of responsibility there. However, to your point, what they also did, which I really liked, is and I don't know if they still do this because I've been out for a while, but the other thing they did is they framed every single person that came in the door as, whether or not you're a manager, right? You're a manager or a supervisor, whether or not you're responsible for other people, that's different than being a leader. And every single person that comes to the door is a leader. And so then that gave everyone ownership, and everyone had to work on themselves. And so that kind of created like that 360 approach, where it was everyone above, below you, beside you. Everyone had a responsibility to help everyone else lift up. Um,
I love that. And I've done
yeah.
that in more than one organization, because that's exactly where my focus is going, is how do we, as well-being professionals, which is what I see that we are, help individuals understand their leadership opportunity? Because you know that I use the above and below the line from conscious.is. And I believe every one of us are a leader, even if we are only leading the calendar of our day, right? If we, it's just us
Right.
leading, we're making those choices. We are creating our life by the choices that we make. And so I love that you have gone into even one organization, but I'd be curious if there's more where the focus is on helping individuals show up as their best.
Absolutely. And so, you reminded me of this has been said in so many different ways. And I came up with two ends of the spectrum. One is, I remember when I was growing up a kid and Charles Barkley was, a professional football or professional basketball player. And he said, well, I'm not your kid's role model. And you know what? He was wrong because just by virtue of being in the public eye, being recorded, being on TV, he was back to that individual leader. He had a level of responsibility to even say, like, hey, I don't always say the right thing, or there are things I want better about myself. So maybe don't use me as an example of what you strive to be, but you can see where like he needed to be more vulnerable. And clearly at that time with basketball, they were, they all were trying to be big, tough guys. So that probably wouldn't have gone over very well with his, sponsorships. But if we were to look at it from a wellness perspective, him taking a little bit of time to be vulnerable and saying, hey, I'm not comfortable being your kid's role model because I've done a lot of things that I'm not happy with or that I don't think I've done well. And so, hey, here's this other guy, Robinson or somebody like that, right? He went to the Naval Academy and, he's like, has this like perfect track record. Maybe you want to look up to him because he seems to be getting it right. But we, that vulnerability
That
would have
ability
been a lot more honest.
to put the
Huh?
ego aside, that a willingness to be vulnerable,
Correct.
put our ego aside, even for a moment. And I
Yeah, and on the other end of that, what's interesting about that, so the other end of that spectrum I was thinking about was Elizabeth Gilbert, right? So when she came out with Eat, Love, Pray, whichever direction, whichever words those go in, whichever order, um, she got a lot of flack for basically the concept of her book. It was about her, right? So they were like, oh, she's so egotistical, but her message wasn't about, and I talk about this every day in my office in the clinical setting. So aside from Magic Feather, in the clinical side, I talk about this every day that if you don't take care of yourself, now this doesn't mean, pushing people aside, stepping on people, hurting others to get what you want. It means that you're, eating healthy, getting enough sleep, intentional movement, finding purpose in your life, looking for things that bring you joy, all these things. If you're not doing that and taking care of yourself, you're never going to be the best parent, friend, spouse, partner, worker, coworker, boss, CEO, whatever. You'll never be the best because you're not taking care of yourself. And so she got a lot of flack for kind of saying that. It was like, she's like, I had to take care of me. And by me being my best self, I'm helping the world. And people are like, oh, that's so egotistical. But imagine if every single person on this planet right now stopped and just worked on being their best selves.
that's what I'm calling for. And that's what I'm calling for. And I'm being bold about it, Mandy. And I believe we are being called to evolve. And evolution of the human consciousness is a place where each of us have peace and each of us are responsible for our own imprint of energy in the world. And when we can, I believe, get to that place where we're owning how we show up and owning that we're contributing to a positive place of psychological safety, that we are sharers of light instead of sharers of darkness and bringing other people down. If more of us evolve to this place of peace within ourselves and an understanding that we are part of this world that is a raft, right? We're in a world that's floating through the sky, and everyone who is sick or miserable um, creates more darkness. And those of us who are healthy and light can bring others with us.
And you just go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, no, I feel like it's bold, but I feel like it's the simplest thing if more of us can just choose to take ownership of the energy we bring to the world.
So what I was going to say is something so poignant, that those of us that are healthy, right? So that's where, and I think people get confused. Well, I won't go too far into that. I think people confuse like this responsibility of being our best selves with, well, why should I be responsible for other people? It's not really that, right? It's not that we have to take care of everyone in the world. It's take care of yourself. And by doing that, you're going to smile at someone that's having a bad day just because you're taking care of yourself. You're going to naturally want to, you know, pick up the piece of trash on the side of the road or whatever the case may be, because you're feeling good and you feel like you have that greater purpose. And so, and the nice thing about that is then when we're having a bad day, we know that someone else is going to have our back. And I think people, so it's that little bit of like, hey, when things are good for me, some people say, well, I finally got things, things are going well for me and I don't want to share that. I get that. And just know that, like, life is all about ups and downs, that you and I were talking about before, you're never always going to be on top. Any athlete can tell you that, right? No record stands forever. That's why it's a record, right? And it never stands forever. And so, if you've ever, and I know Patty, you do, so this is kind of why I'm using this as an example. As an elite athlete, that there's always going to be someone that's going to come up and be better at you at some point.
Yep.
And that's okay. That's the good part about it. You want someone to do that because it feels awesome that someone finally could achieve that too. And so the point is that when you're having a downtime, you want someone to be able to come and pick you up. So I, you made me think of in this moment is one of my favorite all-time poems. And I think it is bold. And I also think it's been around for a while. People just haven't really wanted to hear it, or I don't know what it is. I don't know what's kept us from this. One of my favorite poems is from Ralph Waldo Emerson, and it's what he considered to be the definition of success. And the poem, and I apologize if I mess it up a little bit, but it's the extent of the poem is to laugh often and much, to win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children, to earn appreciation from honest critics and endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty, to find the best in others, to leave the world a little bit better, whether by a healthy child or a garden patched or a redeemed social condition. To know one of that, to know that one person in your life has breathed easier because of you, you have succeeded. And I think that's what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
And someone as enlightened as Emerson was saying this a century ago. And we're finally catching up, I think, hopefully.
Well, we've been conditioned, I believe, and however we see it, we've all fallen into this physical world where our acolytes, our title, our car, our home, our zip code, our education have become a shield and a roadblock in some ways of living a really great life. I can't tell you how many people I have coached and talked to who have chosen a profession. They go head on into the profession because they believe that that profession is what they're being called to. And yet they don't, or they haven't up until now, thought about all it will take to become successful. People who want to write a book and they want to be an author and they want to be a speaker, but they don't think about the fact that they don't like to write, they don't really have a message, and they don't want to travel. Okay, let's rethink what it is you want to do, because the journey, if you don't enjoy the journey, you're never going to enjoy the destination. The destination
So,
disappoint.
yeah.
You haven't enjoyed what you're getting to. And if you don't like what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, no destination is going to fill that void within you. And so as we start to create a world where we show up as our best, that means checking in with ourselves. Am I aligning with my best self? Having this conversation. And this is a resounding yes, Mandy, because you and I are looking towards the same thing. How do we lighten the load for others? How do we take such good care of ourselves that our gifts will overflow? And the last 4 years in the forest, I will tell you, there have been multiple times when I've thought, wouldn't it be easy? I'll just stay at home. I'll go for my walks in the forest. I'll journal. I'll do Tai Chi. I'll do all these things. And I will tell you that the amount of energy I have pulls me because I can't, with the energy that I have by taking care of myself, I can't be quiet. I can't stop talking about this vision that I believe that I've met so many beautiful people on my path, so many, and you were one of them that lights up the world. And I believe that if more of us can see it that way, if more of us can choose to be like Emerson and make just a small difference wherever we're planted, imagine the beauty we can bring to the world.
I love it. It's so beautiful. And so some small starts for people, things that I do in the office, I was thinking about this, was oftentimes I'm finding when people struggle to find that light, they're not feeling connected. And I think that's something certainly in Western culture we do a a really good job for a horrible outcome is that we try to stovepipe or silo people, right? We're all individuals, and truly we're not. I mean, all living organisms are connected. And the
Mhm.
more we start to learn that and realize that, then suddenly we change our behavior. Even trees talk to one another, right? I forget, the chemicals they release to tell trees that are further away to close up all their pores so they can make it through a fire, right? So that's connection. And if we do that for each other, then we can weather the storm, we can weather the fires of life. But we have to, and you're right. There are so many days where I'm tired. It's cold in Maryland right now. It is, well, right now it's beautiful, but it's winter time, so it's cold. It's been in the 20s a lot and it's gloomy and cloudy, and I don't want to get out of bed. But I do. And a lot of times, or I don't want to go coach my kids' teams in the evening. And then as soon as I get there, I get all fired up and my husband laughs at me because he's like, you are so excited about this. And then I will mull over it for days after the practice, like, okay, how do we work on this? And how and it just gets me excited. And yeah, I could do the same thing. I could just do the one job and come home at the end of the day and I wouldn't feel fulfilled. And then my light would dim. So by helping others, and I tell this a lot for folks that come in my office that are having a lot of depression, one of the best, absolute best medicines you can ever take for depression is to go out and volunteer. Go out and help somebody else. It will raise your dopamine levels. It will raise your serotonin levels. It will allow you, by virtue of helping somebody else, get better.
Mm. I love
So
I love that. It's not even a big help. Mandy, I really feel that it could be as simple as a phone call or a note or
absolutely.
just a text that says, I'm thinking of you today. And that's one of the best little tips I've ever had is when I'm having a hard day, if I simply send a text to my daughter, a friend, somebody saying, I appreciate you. I mean, it's not always a fishing expedition, but sometimes I need it. And so I will reach out to somebody else. And just by giving the note, I feel better. And then most often I get a note back that says, hey, I hope you're doing well. How are you? We're just starting a conversation. And that's enough to get me out of my little dreary bubble, if it happens to be a dreary bubble today.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And continuing to chase things. So a lot of times with folks, and I know we're getting short on time, so I don't want to go too deep into this, but something I do with a lot of folks, I find often that there are a couple things that chronically come up, no matter what they have, no matter how severe their stuff is. And it usually comes down to lack of connection, not feeling part of something else, and feeling a lack of purpose. Those two things, in fact, my dissertation ended up being on purpose accidentally. I was studying wellness programs, and the number one thing that showed people what correlated with health and better performance was purpose. And that had such a high correlation. It was astounding. It was very surprising, but then the more we thought about it, wasn't. So I use that every day clinically. And I do a few things. I have people go out and I have them write down 20 things that bring them joy. And And I say things, I should say items. It could be a moment in time that only happened once. It can be something that happens every day. Squirrels fighting in a park always makes mine because squirrels make me laugh. They are such quirky little animals. Um, and and once you start to look at what brings you joy, you'll start to find things that you feel connected to and that you feel passionate about, and that you feel maybe it's something that you're good at doing, but you just never identified it as something you could do something with. And then that helps people, that kind of starts them on this journey, as you talked about earlier, of trying to find something that is greater than themselves, that we have to make ourselves better, right? And then we can then connect ourselves while we're on this journey of being our best self to something that's greater than ourselves. And that then gives us that extra boost of light. That's like the, you know, the nitrous oxide, in our tank that really shoots us to the moon. Um, and so doing that can really help people find some sort of greater purpose.
I love
Um,
that. And that greater purpose, I think we both know because we've worked with enough people. I've seen it. It could be that they take a small garbage bag out and pick up garbage on their walk. It could be that they say hi to the woman down the street that sits alone on her porch every morning. It could be, you know, a wide variety of things. I have this beautiful woman in my life who, she's had a hard time over the last few years and been a little bit in her shell. And she's just volunteered for a text hotline where all she does is really support people by text if they're struggling with something. And it's where she's at. And it's such a beautiful place to be. She is so excited that she can give back by being on the other side of a text to somebody who is hurting. And that's where she's at. And I just get goosebumps thinking about how excited she was to get this volunteer opportunity to be part of something that is working to ease the suffering of others in the world. And that's all I believe that we need to do is find just the smallest way to ease suffering rather than add to the darkness.
Absolutely. And it was a quote, I'm sure many people have said this, but I heard it from the Mind Valley founder, Vishen Lakhiani, and he said, hurt people hurt people. And so the more we can ease people's pain, and that's where addiction comes from, right? It's the numbing of some sort of pain. So the more we can ease people's pain and help lighten their load until they get well, then they're less likely to hurt others. They're less likely to lash out. We give them a little extra bandwidth. And, sometimes just being a good parent, I have a former boss that he said he worked in the intelligence community. He said, well, my greatest gift to my country is being a good dad, because if I raise good, solid people, then they will make this country better. And it was just so simple, but so true. Right.
We can help
So,
people find that, right? It's
yeah,
every person's mission and purpose will be different, but I believe we each have a very specific one. And it may be, being on a world stage, and for others, it may be just simply being. And all of us are
yeah.
valuable. And I just so appreciate you, Mandy. This has been a beautiful conversation.
It really has. And it's been so lovely to connect with you again from across the country. And I'm so glad you're well. And I'm so glad you're doing this. Thank you so much for bringing light to so many people's lives.
Let's keep doing it and let's have some more conversations because I always enjoy our conversations.
I would love that. I would love that.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.